Welcome to Bunny Trails, a whimsical adventure of idioms and other turns of phrase. I'm Shauna Harrison.
And I'm Dan Pugh. Each week, we take an idiom or other turn of phrase and try to tell the story from its entry into the English language to how it's used today. Have you ever wanted to find that easy path in life? The one where you have a good job that doesn't require much but makes great money? Or maybe the one where you get to work on your hobbies all the time because you've got someone supporting your lifestyle? I think we all might want to find a way to ride that gravy train.
Okay, I like this phrase. I've not really used it myself, I don't think much, but I've heard it a lot. Or I don't know. I'm aware of it. Like it sounds like it's something familiar, you know?
Sure. Well, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, one definition of gravy is, quote, money easily acquired, an unearned or unexpected bonus, a tip, hence to ride the gravy train, to obtain easy financial success, end quote.
Is that similar to the it's all gravy or something? I just kind of thought of it as an extra. It's like it's a bonus. So I guess similar thinking there.
Well, yes, gravy is an unexpected bonus, yes.
Huh.
So that is one way the word gravy has been used over time. Gravy, the food, is something that is easy to make, for most people at least. It comes from the juices of the meat that you've already cooked, and then you can add spices or flours or other things to make it thicker or richer. In some cases, it's just the juices and you don't add much of anything to it. But in all cases, it is cheap because it is already part of the cooking process and you don't have to add much to it to make it happen, which makes it easy to understand why gravy might have taken on a meaning of money that is easily gained. As far as gravy train goes, though, most internet sleuths seem to agree this originated with railroad slang. Though, as with so many other things on the internet, we don't have any actual evidence to support this claim. The story is thus: many folks thought working on a train was easy money. Clearly, they weren't talking about building train tracks, but rather working as crew to haul a load. And perhaps there is some truth to the railroad slang origin, but I could not find any evidence at all to support that this phrase is railroad slang. And I haven't seen anyone that is making the claim support it with evidence either. In fact, the Oxford English Dictionary, which is very good about using origins and first-person citations when they make a claim, does not say this is railroad slang either. They just say it is slang originally from the U.S. So this makes me wonder if the association was made because of the word train being attached to gravy, as in like a gravy boat or a gravy train, or if it was simply like this job is going to be gravy and they were talking about trains or whatever, and so this maybe there was some association there. Or perhaps we just don't have the digitized records necessary to be able to show it, but it could truly be from one of those easy paychecks that came from working on a train back in those days. But the point is, we don't really know for sure where that origin happened. However, the first usage I could find is from the Unionville Republican out of Missouri, and it is dated August 31st, 1898. The piece is called Chickamauga Letter, with a byline of Chickamauga Park, Lytle, Georgia, and this is August 29th of 1898. It's addressed to the Unionville Republican. It was signed by James Talton Estep. Quote, some of them have humbled themselves before Governor Shaw and gone to Washington and reported to the Secretary of War that 9/10 of the boys wanted to go to some of our new possessions to do garrison duty. If they had said 1/10, I think they would have come nearer being right. Still, we can't blame them much, for this war is a gravy train for them. They can sit back on their tents and watch the boys work, with 3 or 4 orderlies to wait too on them and not give them a pleasant look, and at the end of every month take in $300 or $400, end quote.
Okay.
So in this, the first time we see it is clearly being used as a figurative for this war as a gravy train for them, talking about the folks who are in a higher position, not having to do any of the hard labor work and are supervising.
Right.
And it's in relation to the military. So now I'm not saying this is where it comes from originally because it's clearly being used figuratively here. So it was it used figuratively before that? Quite possibly. I just don't know. But it certainly the first time I see it wasn't exactly railroad.
Yeah.
Now, the next one I see, and there were a couple of little ones in there where I wasn't sure if they were figurative or not, depending on things, and tons of things talking about gravy boats. And a gravy boat, I should probably say, if for anybody who hasn't realized this, a gravy boat is just a serving dish that holds gravy that you can then, take to the table with you and have gravy and for people to get the gravy out of it. And gravy train is another term for gravy boat as well. Although it's a far less used one, gravy boat is far more popular and has been for a long time. But
Okay.
yeah, so there were a lot of things where I saw gravy train was like, this may be talking about that food. I can't tell, so I didn't want to use them. But the next one that I found that was very clearly figurative, like we wanted, is from the Americus Times Recorder. This is June 16th, 1908. And this is out of Americus, Georgia. Now, these last two here are both, these two are both out of Georgia. So perhaps there's some sort of a regional thing there where it got started there more than anywhere else. But the other guy was from Missouri and then writing while he was in Georgia back to Missouri. So I don't know. I'm not certain that that was a Georgian thing or not, but just interesting. So this features the story of Colonel W.P. Jowers. He was a local farmer who was sitting on 180 bales of choice cotton. He is waiting for cotton prices to rise again before he sells them. The article notes he did the same last year and sold all of his then 300 bales in one go at the peak of the price last summer. And that prompted this headline, quote, "This farmer has birth on gravy train," end quote.
Very
So
clever.
basically, they just talked about how this guy, he's got 180 bales of choice cotton here, and he didn't like the prices, and so he just sat on them. He was just waiting, and when the price got to where he thought it was appropriate, he'd sell them. But since he was storing them inside in a not a barn, but more like a warehouse, then he wasn't worried about them being damaged. And he even said in the piece that if he needs to wait till next year to sell them, he'll wait.
Wow,
Which
interesting.
is so like this is the thing. The guy not only can the guy afford to not sell them right now, which means he's doing pretty well, but he
Right.
also has this huge money maker that's just sitting there that he's just waiting for the right time to dump into the market.
Yeah.
So yeah, interesting. All right, here's an example from University Life in the Ole Miss 1913-1914. This is the official yearbook of the University of Mississippi. The chapter is called Ole Miss as She Is Spoke and features a word and the word used in a sentence. Here is our phrase, quote, "Gravy train. Freshman math, get off that gravy train," end quote. I believe the implication is that freshman math is too easy. I think that's what they were going for there with that example because it was a senior that they were quoting. Like this is how the seniors are using phrases. So
Right.
freshman math, get off that easy pathway and take some real math.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
funny.
Although I would say, as someone who has a hate relationship with math, meaning I hate it and it hates me, I wouldn't. I would also opt for freshman math if I had to.
Fair.
Whatever the most gravy of the maths is, that's what I would do.
Um,
This next one is from a work called Harnessing Manpower of Church by Frank Lee Slaymaker. It was published in 1920. It details a recruitment campaign for bringing in new members to the church and focuses on taking the young men and splitting them into two teams, competitive, that would try to bring more people to the church, with a reward for the winning team and a penalty for the losing team.
oh.
Here was one such suggestion, and frankly, the only one I could find that didn't treat women like property, so this is the only one I'm going to use. Quote, "One of the best reward and penalty plans is in the form of a banquet to be paid for by the original members of the losing side. New members secured on that side during the contest not being expected to pay, and the winners to ride the gravy train." End quote.
Okay.
So yeah, the winners get to be fed and waited on, and the losing team, whoever was on that team originally, would have to pay for that. This sounds like the kind of thing that would come from a rich person who doesn't have any concept of people trying to get by in life.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, this is a, yeah.
Yeah. Also, I can tell you this that I'm not a huge fan of competitive things. So if someone had pitched to me, the winner gets this and the loser has to do this, I would say I don't want to do that. I'm not going to participate
Like,
now.
I'm just not going to compete,
Yeah, I'm just not going
like
to do it at
what?
all. No, no, thank you.
But you want me to do the work either way, and then
Right, but
you
I may
might
have to
punish
also
me.
like give up my livelihood, potentially to support this. No, I'm
Right.
good, thanks. So,
Thanks.
all right, here's an example from a book of American sayings called American Speech, Volume 2, 1926 to 1927. This was edited by Louise Pound of the University of Nebraska, Kemp Malone of Johns Hopkins University, and Arthur Kennedy of Stanford University. It was published in 1927. Here is the simple entry. Quote, gravy train, sinecure, end quote. All right, so if you're like me and you don't know what sinecure means, according
Okay.
to Merriam-Webster, it means, quote, an office or position that requires little or no work and that usually provides an income, end quote. So, gravy train in this book of American slang means something that requires little to no work but still provides money.
Huh. How do you get one of those, Like that's
I think you have to be a very important person who has influence. And then this is
mm,
how you get hired on so that your influence can be exerted on their behalf and you get paid money but don't have to do any real work other than use your influence.
I see. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
Sometimes, and I've heard this happen too, where maybe someone has some negative things, some research or some opinions, and they have a lot of influence and not a lot of morals, I guess.
Mm.
And so someone doesn't want those to come to light. So then they may hire someone on for that purpose, sinecure, gravy train. And yeah, and then they'd be in an office or a position that does not require them to do much other than they have signed an agreement to not talk about that thing or whatever while
Yeah,
they're
okay.
working. And so basically they're being paid a salary to or a certain amount every year to just not talk about that thing that they don't want out.
So
I've
it
also
might
heard
be,
examples of that
is
in
it that's
business.
like what? Like legalized blackmail or something? I don't even know.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, it's definitely things that probably shouldn't be allowed. I think it's far more
It's like
common though that
technically a contract, I guess, but still.
I think it's far more common for someone to be paid for their influence in the more positive realm, meaning like,
Right.
hey, so and so is on our board of trustees, or so and so is part of our, part of our team, and so you should come over here because hey, we have, Joe Schmo or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, this next one is an example from the Sweetwater Nolan County News. This is Sweetwater, Texas, October 27th, 1932. In it, the Republican gubernatorial candidate Orville Bullington had some fighting words for two prominent Democrats that had held power at the time. Quote, and they are sore and scared because I am about to wreck their gravy train. If you will elect me governor, I will put on my boots and spurs and ride both of them off of Capitol Hill, Bullington shouted. End quote.
Well,
Bullington lost to Miriam Ferguson, who herself was a former governor of Texas and who had defeated the current Democratic governor of Texas in a close primary battle. So she served a term and then had a term off when another Democratic governor served, and now she was going to be serving another term in Texas, which was not a rare thing in Texas early on, where they had a lot of Democratic governors.
yeah. It's interesting though.
So, a quick note about something you may find if you're looking into this phrase. Everyone and their cousin posts about a W.C. Handy song in 1914, where he sings about falling off the gravy train. I went through the lyrics of every W.C. Handy song I could find, and I could not find whatever song is being referenced. Anyone who quotes W.C. Handy doesn't say the name of the song, which makes me think it doesn't actually exist. The closest I could find was 1912's Yellow Dog Blues, which is about the concept of falling off of the gravy train, but the phrase is never used in the song. Instead, the term easy rider is used. So, if any of our astute listeners out there are blues historians and can point me to a song, that would be awesome. But because Yellow Dog Blues is about the railroad, part of me wonders if there isn't an association with a belief that the railroad origin comes from W.C. Handy, because this is just quoted and quoted and quoted and quoted over and over again. I've seen it literally on like major news networks talking about this, and they never ever ever say the name of the song. And that is wild to me. I cannot fathom a situation now where they would do that, where they would quote song lyrics, or actually they don't even quote song lyrics. They just say it was W.C. Handy who said this in a song, and he's oftentimes credited as making this phrase take off. But I can't find anything where he even said it. The term he used was easy rider, and the song was about losing the opportunity to make good money, kind of falling off of that gravy train, we might say now. But he did not use that word in that song Yellow Dog Blues.
That's
So
interesting.
there must be another song that isn't listed in anywhere now that W.C. Handy sung. And I mean, like, he's one of the godfathers of blues music in the United States. So you would think that most of his songs would be cataloged and you could read lyrics. So I don't know. Part of me wonders if the belief that this is railroad slang is because of the constant attribution to W.C. Handy that I just cannot verify anywhere at all.
That is really interesting.
Yeah.
Like,
So, again, if any of you out there are blues historians or remember the song, have heard the song, point it to me, please send it to us, bunnytrailspod@gmail.com, and let us know. But for now, I'm going to have to say there just isn't any evidence to support this widely distributed claim about W.C. Handy, or frankly, for that matter, a railroad slang origin. Well, with that, it is time to move to our modern uses. But first, we need to say thank you to our sponsors.
this episode is sponsored by our amazing patrons on Patreon. And the cool thing about Patreon is it is 100% free to join the community. We have new things every weekday on the feeds. On Mondays, we have a conversation about what movies, shows, books, podcasts, and whatever else everyone is enjoying. Tuesdays see early access to the week's podcast. Wednesdays have all the links, books, songs, and other content mentioned in the week's episode. Thursday has patrons-only polls, and Fridays are our lightly edited behind-the-scenes video featuring all the cut content, goofs, and bonus facts you could imagine.
We've got some other pretty cool stuff too, like original digital artwork once a month made by Shauna, and direct access to Talk With Us. No algorithms getting in the way of what we see or don't see. Plus, you can get awesome name recognition like Pat Rowe does every episode. And our top spot is currently occupied by the amazing Mary Halsig Lopez. You can join the Bunny Trails community for free at Bunny Trails Pod on Patreon.
That's patreon.com/bunnytrailspod.
We're going to start our modern uses in 1958 with the West End musical Espresso Bongo. It stars Paul Scofield as Johnny, a slimy, small-time music promoter and talent scout who notices teenage girls going crazy for the singing and bongo playing of talentless and seemingly idiotic Herbert Rudge, played by James Kinney. Johnny rechristens Rudge as Bongo Herbert and signs him to a contract that gives Johnny a 50% share of the profits. With Johnny's help, Bongo rockets to stardom. Bongo's success attracts a host of sleazy music industry types intent on exploiting him, and Johnny quickly finds himself outclassed in the sleaze department as Bongo turns out to be the slippery slime of them all. So, one of the songs sung near the end of the production is called The Gravy Train, and is sung by the character Johnny, played by Paul Scofield. The original cast recording of the soundtrack wasn't released until 1979, which is 22 years after the show originally aired at the Seville Theater in April of 1958. Here's the opening line of The Gravy Train. Quote, I've packed my bag and I've got my ticket, and I was on the train to Shangri-La. There's a palace to rent there, but for me, not a tent there, 'cause I've got to get off the gravy train. End quote. This is his realization that he has been out-sleazed and he's going to lose his gravy train.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Gravy Train was a 1974 American crime comedy starring Stacy Keach and Frederick Forrest. The film is also sometimes called the Dion Brothers. Here's the synopsis from the trailer. Quote, two good old boys from West Virginia rob and stomp their way to glory riding the gravy train. End quote.
Nice.
Yeah, this one, it looked very 1970s-ish, but there were some pretty good one-liners in the trailer. So just bumbling idiot brothers, but,
Okay.
fun times ensued, it seemed like.
Nice.
Here's another example, this time in the lyrics of Pink Floyd's 1975 song, Have a Cigar, off the album Wish You Were Here. Here are the lyrics, quote, come in, dear boy, have a cigar, you're gonna go far, you're gonna fly. You're never gonna die, you're gonna make it if you try, they're gonna love you. Well, I've always had a deep respect, and I mean that most sincere, the band is just fantastic. That is really what I think. Oh, by the way, which one is pink? And did we tell you the name of the game, boy? We call it Riding the Gravy Train. End quote.
Oh.
I've definitely heard the phrase in this song lots and lots of times. Being a fan of Pink Floyd, not like a mega fan or anything, but like I like classic rock style music. So
Yeah. Okay, this is one of those things where like I've listened to the song but not really paid attention to the
yeah,
lyrics. Like some songs I'm gonna sing every like even find out what the lyrics are if I can't tell. And I'm not sure I paid attention to these to know that it had Gravy Train in it.
The Gravy Train was a TV miniseries that aired on Channel 4 in 1990. It starred Christoph Waltz, Ian Richardson, and Almanta Suska. It is described by the British Comedy Guide as, quote, satire about the widespread fraud and corruption within the European economic community, end quote. This was a very young Christoph Waltz who has now gone on to become a kind of a mega superstar among movies and stuff now. But yeah, this was a pretty early role for him, and it seemed the concept behind it with the satire about someone moving into the European economic community and then trying to overcome some of the corruption and fraud there it seems like it'd be a pretty funny thing.
Interesting too.
Or a little too close to home for some. So
Yeah,
it just depends, I guess. The Gravy Train by Philip Bushell Matthews is a tell-all book released in 2003 by Pulpero Heritage Press. Their synopsis says the book, quote, charts the progress of a businessman who, frustrated by increasing EU regulation made by politicians with no experience of the real world, quits a successful career in order to become a member of the European Parliament. In a candid and humorous account, Philip Bushell Matthews reveals what he found in his new role and lays bare many of the excesses and bureaucratic bunglings of the EU, from fraud and corruption to dotty directives. Avoiding political jargon, he gives an insight into many of the issues of the day and exposes full details of MEPs' pay and expenses, end quote.
Okay.
Well, this sounds like a tell-all about the thing that our previous example was satirizing.
That's a while.
And Gravy Train was used throughout both of those, and that was a good 10, 15 years later.
Wow.
Young Gravy has a song called Gravy Train. Of course. Why wouldn't he?
Naturally, yeah.
Yeah, which debuted in 2018 on his YouTube page, but was ultimately released in 2019 on the album Sensational. I cannot actually tell you any of the lyrics because they don't go more than one line without using a curse word. The song is interesting because it samples Maxine Nightingale's 1975 song Right Back Where We Started From. And sampling is where an artist uses elements of an existing song and recontextualizes it in some way to help make a new song. Sampling is a fascinating concept, so in our behind the scenes video this week, we're going to look a little more into what is sampling in music and some of the history behind it. You can find our behind the scenes videos every Friday on our Patreon. That's patreon.com/bunnytrailspod. In 2018, the dog food brand Gravy Train, founded in 1959, hit the news due to it containing low levels of phenobarbital, a drug that is used to euthanize animals. Here's a quick overview from March 14th, 2018 from the American Veterinary Medical Association website. Quote, one dog died and others became ill after, in late 2016, eating canned food from Eviger's dog and cat food company that was contaminated with pentobarbital. WJLA TV in Washington, D.C. later tested 62 samples of wet dog food across more than 24 brands for pentobarbital. 9 of the 15 cans of Gravy Train from J.M. Smucker had positive results. After learning of the results, J.M. Smucker initiated a withdrawal of all lots of canned dog food from its Gravy Train, Kibbles and Bits, Old Roy, and Skippy brands manufactured from 2016 through February 16th. End quote.
That would be such a huge impact on the company, I would think. Like,
Yeah, one would think.
if for no other reason than just that negative perception that it would create. People love their animals, you know? I mean, like yeah.
Yeah.
And I think like you hear people, that's the kind of thing where they're just never going to try it. Like if they had a bad experience or if they were worried about that thing, they won't go back to it sometimes, you know? So yeah, that could
Yeah.
could be bad.
I realize I also said the wrong drug when I first originally said it. So it's pentobarbital, not phenobarbital. Pentobarbital.
I wasn't sure, you know, but
I think it's interesting because when they tested it, it was like 9 of 15 cans. So that's like carry the 1, divide by pi, add the whole integer, 60%. That's 60%. That's like more than half of them.
wow.
More than half of them that they tested. Small sample size. but
Yeah.
still. Oof. All right. Well, I don't want to end on a depressing note. So I've got one more for you, especially if you live in or near Sheffield in the UK. This is the Gravy Train Poutine. I love this already.
Okay.
So they are currently based at the Neepsend Social Club and Canteen, and they have a cool overview on their website. Quote, since it came kicking and screaming into the world way back in the 1950s, poutine has rightly become a cult classic throughout Canada, the US, and more recently, Sheffield. For the uninitiated, poutine is a French-Canadian dish consisting of seasoned skin-on French fries, the squeakiest cheddar cheese curds, and an absolutely killer chicken gravy. The beauty of poutine is in its simplicity. There's no room for half measures. That's why we took 5 whole years to finally settle our now top secret gravy recipe, and we continue to source the tastiest cheese curds that Cheddar Valley has to offer. Contrary to our own well-being, we sampled all kinds of weird and wonderful incarnations of the good stuff back when we visited the land they call Canada back in 2014. Since then, we have been up and down the country at street food events, music festivals, private gigs, and kitchen residencies, selling our wares and honing our recipes. Far from just le classique, we've got all kinds of downright dirty toppings to load your poutine. Barbecue shredded chicken, candied bacon, garlic mushrooms to name a few, with all kinds of options for our veggie and vegan friends. The fun don't stop there though. Since we've taken on a residency down at Neepsend Social Club and Canteen, we've also been working hard on some other great additions to our menu. If it's dirty food you're after, then we've got you. Smashed burgers, fried chicken, deep-fried cheese curds, and more line up alongside the poutine we know and love. We're always keeping it friggity fresh down at GTHQ, so be sure to give us a follow on socials to keep up with our newest culinary creations and seasonal specials. End quote.
Like I cannot. I would like.
Yeah, thegtpoutine.com. Yeah,
Nice.
you can go learn a little bit more about it. If I am ever in Sheffield, you can be assured this is the thing I'm going to go look up.
Fantastic.
Well, I happen to like gravy in almost all its forms, and so I don't have any opposition to gravy train as a phrase, but I could see if someone hated gravy, how they may immediately be put off by it. Still, I think all of us would be okay if we could find that proverbial gravy train and never had to worry about finances again a day in our life. That's about all the time we have for today. If you have any thoughts on the show or pop culture references we should have included, reach out to us on Patreon. That's patreon.com/bunnytrailspod, or comment on our website, bunnytrailspod.com.
It is poll time. Recently, we asked our patrons would they prefer an outdoor concert or an outdoor movie. 3/4 of our patrons voted for an outdoor concert. Emily says, quote, "I'll take live entertainment over a movie any day," end quote.
Heather added, quote, "I love going to any concert, indoors or out, but I have some really fun memories of outdoor concerts from college. Maybe it's an age thing as much as the place," end quote. I also love outdoor concerts. Shauna drugged me to a Hailstorm concert outside earlier this year. I don't remember.
Yeah.
It's more her music than mine, but it was still fun. And I've seen some good movies outside, though, too, because Wichita still has a drive-in theater.
Yeah, it's true. And it's pretty fun. I think it depends on who you're with, too. That makes a difference.
That is true. But like Emily said, I will take live entertainment over a movie any day.
Yeah. Well, as a reminder, our silly polls mean absolutely nothing and are not scientifically valid, and patrons of all levels, including our free tiers, can take part. Head over to patreon.com/bunnytrailspod to take this week's poll. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you again next week. And until then, remember,
Words belong to their users.